Okay, committee member Sellers, back to you. We're all set.
Thank you. All right, we are back in open session. Is there a motion to move to resume open session at 9 a.m.?
Committee member Gibler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Committee member Virgin, seconds.
Thank you. We'll do a roll call vote. Committee member Anderson.
Here.
Oh, yes or no? Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. Committee member Gibler.
Yes.
Committee member Hammond.
Yes.
Committee member Sellers votes yes. Committee member Virgin.
Yes.
Committee member Wickenhagen. Oh, Sarah, I think you're on mute. Did you say yes? Okay, I see a head nod. All right, this motion passes. So we will begin with proposed rule review for board excluded vaccine protocols and board delegated limited authority with Executive Director Runyon. So take it away.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Executive Director Runyon. Thanks for meeting on such short notice. And I'll wait for staff member Melvin to get this rule pulled up. There are a lot of moving parts here while she gets that loaded. Just to give you a brief overview of what we had to do to make all of those parts move in the right direction and coalesce in terms of the timing. Essentially, we had to create exceptions to the universal rules in Division 102, creating exceptions delegated or determined by the board to that staff delegated authority that allowed us to update the protocol versioning via the delegated authority from the board president. So essentially, we're creating exceptions to that in Division 102, and we're also removing the 3 vaccine protocols that we'll be covering today from the universal protocol list, and we'll create a standalone protocol and vote on that separately. So those are all the moving parts that we have to coordinate to get this taken care of. So staff member Melvin has the pharmacist division 115 rule pulled up, and that just outlines essentially the lines of authority for the vaccines. And then we have the protocols listed here. So since we're removing the influenza, COVID, and RSV from the universal protocols, we'll update those universal protocols with today's date showing that they've been amended. And then, as mentioned previously in number 5, we have the board excluded vaccine protocols. You'll see that in the Division 102 rule as well. And we'll get we'll get to the specifics of C and D a little later, why those have strike-throughs in them or are stricken. And that has to do with the PrEP Act. We'll get to that when we talk about the coronavirus vaccine protocol.
Wait a second, and I'll pull up the others.
Okay, we have Division 102 pulled up. So this was the rule that I believe the board adopted in August, allowing the board president to delegate limited authority to staff to update vaccine protocol versions as dictated by ACIP recommendations if adopted by the CDC as formal policy. So you'll see the bolded and underlined portion there. It's a second moving piece in order to orchestrate all this. We had to take the vaccines out and then create this exception to the board delegated authority. So I guess in some limited capacity, if there are still residual ACIP recommendations that don't change, or they're updated in a way that reflects common sense, current science, and the will of the board, the PHPFAC, that staff would be able to continue to update those protocols. via this delegated authority, but we just created an exception for the 3 protocols that are coming out and any other protocols that may come out subsequent to the recommendations that might come from the West Coast Health Alliance.
Okay, I'm just going to keep going and open the protocols and then make a motion at the end. We'll do that.
So while she's opening the individual protocols, how did we get here today? As you all know, there are some structural and perhaps ideological changes that have happened and are happening at the federal level, and that's caused delays in issuing what, frankly, can be unpredictable guidance, and that's caused significant barriers to accessing care for patients at a really critical time on the precipice of respiratory season. And that was part of the impetus for the West Coast Health Alliance being formed. So it was announced on September 3rd. It's an alliance between California, Washington, and Oregon. And then on September 4th, Hawaii joined. And the West Coast Health Alliance is issuing immunization recommendations for the 25-26 respiratory virus season. And you'll see later, these recommendations are informed by trusted national medical organizations, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and the American Academy of Family Physicians. And the West Coast Health Alliance reviewed vaccine effectiveness, epidemiological and safety data, and national medical organization recommendations to arrive at these consensus recommendations that will form the cornerstones of our protocols you'll see today. And the West Coast Health Alliance believes that all recommended immunizations should be accessible to people of our states. So first we have the coronavirus 19 vaccine protocol. And you might notice this, I believe as recently as June, this was the basic protocol structure or the streamlined structure that we had worked hard early in the spring to create. So all of the numbers, 1 through I think 9 will be the same laterally across all protocols. So there's a lot of unification here. So it's probably about 50% of what we're going to review it's going to be essentially the same between the protocols. So what we have in the What's New section, basically it's just an outline of what I just talked about, letting pharmacists and other licensees know that, hey, this is where these recommendations are coming from, as opposed to in the past where we would reference ACIP or CDC recommendations there. So we have the What's New portion, and then we have something else you want to talk about related to the PrEP Act and alluded to earlier. So you might notice here, in comparison to the June COVID-19 protocol, that this includes individuals 7 years of age and older. So as of today, that is current. And Angie, feel free to step in if you'd like. The reason this doesn't include ages 3 through 6 years of age is the PrEP Act outlines what constitutes a covered person and/or essentially authorized product. And one of the criteria, or a couple of the criteria for those products or covered persons, is that they're utilizing an FDA and ACIP approved or recommended vaccine. So since we currently at this point do not have ACIP recommendations for COVID vaccines, and the authority for pharmacists to prescribe and administer vaccines for that age range 3 through 6, being contingent upon that is necessarily removed. Board Counsel, do you have anything to add to that, or be happy to answer some questions in as much as I can on that piece?
Yeah, I think that what the statute allows, right, what our statutory authority is that pharmacists can prescribe and administer generally any vaccine to someone 7 years of age or older, with the exception of the influenza virus vaccine, the influenza vaccine. So if that person, I believe that's 6 months and up for influenza, but for every other vaccine, it's 7 years unless there is a public health emergency and a few other exceptions that are permitted. And what the board was relying on before and allowing that the younger age group was the PrEP Act. But because we don't have the recommendations that allow for that we can't rely on the PrEP Act for that ability to do it. So we're back to our statutory authority, which says 7 years and up.
Committee Member Anderson.
Hi, this is Committee Member Anderson. I'm just curious, you did bring up that pharmacists are able to immunize down to age 3 in case of an emergency. Would it be like, should we include something about that, saying that
It has to be governor or, I'm gonna pull up the language, but it's the governor or, I believe the Oregon Health Authority has to declare it. So at this point, we
right,
don't
but
have
I'm
that.
just saying based on what's in statute that allows us to go down to 3. I'm just curious whether or not that would be a good idea to include that just for clarity.
But we don't have that authority because it doesn't exist. So we can't allow a pharmacist to do it because it's not provided for in the statute.
Executive Director, and that
I thought you said it was in statute in a public health emergency.
But that hasn't been declared. So the governor would
Right,
have
I'm
to.
just saying for the verbiage though, in the case of a declared public health emergency, this would also include individuals down to the age of 3. Is that, or is that just going to be understood?
I think it's sort of a policy call for you guys to make. I'm just looking for the language in the statute I think you could put what the statute says in there as long as it doesn't cause confusion, I think is the.
This is Committee Member Gibler. I think if we add it in there, it may cause confusion by some pharmacists who wonder, are we in a declared emergency in situations where, especially when we have small regional emergencies due to wildfires or something. There's different types of declared emergencies. The downside is not adding it, then we got to go back, during a declared emergency, do we then update, convene and meet to update the protocol? So that's Lorinda's asking that, so we don't have to meet in case an emergency is declared, I think.
Yeah, no, you're right. Thank you. This committee member Anderson. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, no, that's my point is like, if it's an assumption that we can the pharmacists, if we did end up in a public health emergency, that pharmacists would know and be able to use this protocol down to 3, then that's fine. We can leave it out, but I just want to make sure that if we need to include it in the case of a public health emergency, that it's there.
Executive Director Runyon, I believe we would have to meet any way to amend the protocol and the vaccine schedule that you'll see in 3. So it would require the PHPFAC to meet regardless. Even if we put that rule reference in there, let's say, state emergency is declared next week, we would still have to come back and meet, and it would have to go through the board to amend this table that we have here in number 3, the vaccine schedule, if that makes sense. So I don't know that it would avert or circumvent us having to meet again either way. And I think, Angie, if you're looking for that statute, I think it's 6896451B that talks about that. It's just my input there.
This is Committee Member Sellers. And we do have our standard meeting next month. So I'm wondering too if, I think for the sake of expediency today and with the goal in mind of getting through all of these things within the next 16 minutes, I guess, how are folks feeling about just moving forward and letting Executive Director Runyon continue presenting these and then doing a vote at the end?
This is Committee Member Gibler. I'm good with that. Let's.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Executive Director Runyon, back to you.
Thank you, Executive Director Runyon. So you'll see here in number 3, vaccine schedule. This is a direct copy and paste from the West Coast Health Alliance recommendations. So I didn't change anything here, and you'll see that this is really in line with the FDA authorization, save for the fact that individuals 2 through 64, Rachel, if you go down there, I believe individuals 2 through 64 who just want additional protection or want protection at all can choose to get the vaccination. Unlike FDA authorization, which requires that there's some sort of underlying or high-risk condition that they spell out. So that's really the key difference here. And I think currently in the OHA protocols, the choice would be under the shared clinical decision-making option to get there. But essentially, these recommendations aren't any different than that. Rachel, you might want to scroll down. I think there's a little bit. Are there any questions about those recommendations or how they might differ from FDA approval or OHA recommendations or previous ACIP recommendations?
This is Committee Member Gibler. You're referring to underlying medical conditions in Appendix A. Where did you get those?
That's
I can't see them either, so I don't know what they are.
Yeah, they're at the bottom, at the very bottom where the appendices are. At the very bottom of the document underneath the references. And those also came directly from the West Coast Health Alliance. So this was a copy and paste as well.
Okay.
And the committee member Sellers wants to point out that there's also a line in there that says anybody who chooses protection within that age group. So regardless, so it is including everybody essentially. Am I correct in that, Executive Director Runyon?
Yes, that's correct. That's what I mentioned. Yeah. And then number 4, because a lot of these additional considerations you'll see across all protocols were rooted in some sort of ACIP recommendation published via the MMWR. A lot of these now between the 3 protocols are much more succinct. So the only additional consideration we had here was just the shared clinical decision-making piece. And we have that down in reference 6 for additional guidance. That is a CDC document. But it hasn't changed, and I'm not sure the likelihood that it will or the likelihood that there would be any impact either way, as we do a fairly good job of spelling that out here. And I don't think that it's 100% required in order for those who choose protection to get the vaccine. And I think this is more related to additional doses. I'm just curious, are we okay with leaving that in there, even though it's a CDC reference in link number 6?
Committee Member Virgin, yes.
Committee Member Wickenhagen, you had your hand up.
I understand we're on a time crunch here, but it's really hard to evaluate a protocol that we've never seen before. Is there any way we could get a link or the actual document?
As Executive Director Runyon, I understand that stance. We were all on a pretty tight crunch to get these out. So while I definitely understand that, I don't think that the link is active quite yet. I think there are plans today to get that out. And a lot of what you're seeing here, this is just residual information from the June protocol. So the warnings and precautions, I didn't add anything in. What I did was just take all of the ACIP MMWR references out. So all of this in the warnings and precautions, number 1, you would have seen previously, and number 2, the residual that's left, it just references the package inserts down below. And I think there's one other guidance document in reference 7. And in the contraindications, you'll see some generic info. Again, severe allergic reactions, that's going to be the same across, the vaccine component or previous dose. And then referral to the prescribing information via package insert, that's going to be the same across all 3 protocols. Same thing for the storage and handling. All of that's lifted from the previous protocol. So this would have been present in the June iteration as well. And we have the references down there.
Committee Member Anderson.
Hey, this committee member Anderson. I think the prescribing information, that verbiage, may be confusing to pharmacists because we're so used to seeing package insert. Is there a way to say the prescribing information via the package insert? Or
It's
like
Executive Director, and
prescribing
yeah, I think we had
information.
landed on that in a previous PFAC meeting, because I'd said package insert, but I think it was Committee Member Gibbler that said we wanted to go towards prescribing information because people don't actually, have the piece of paper in their hand. They access a lot of information electronically that could perhaps be outside of the package insert. But I'm open to whatever you think is appropriate at this point in time. But I think we'd previously settled on that in an earlier meeting.
Okay, I had forgotten that discussion.
Yeah, this committee member Gibbler, that's my fault. That is my recommendation to use prescribing information.
Committee Member Sellers, back up to section 4. Is there value added in keeping that? I guess I'm not sure if that adds confusion when this is really sort of allowing patients to walk up and say, yes, I would like one, and there's not really any other requirement for that.
Executive Director, I think the shared clinical decision-making, Staff Member Mel, if you'll scroll up, was linked to the additional doses. So if someone
okay.
gets 65 plus, do you see it there?
Okay.
It'll be 1 through 5. No, it would be underneath the table.
Yeah, I see. I was
Yeah.
just curious if it would add, increasing the length of the protocol and adding additional information that may not be useful in a community setting, but I'm fine leaving it.
This committee member Gibbler, I need to physically see appendices B, C, please. I think we've seen A.
So here's A again. Just tell me when you're ready for me to keep scrolling, Andrew.
Yeah, we've seen this one. Just B and C would be good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You can keep scrolling down.
Executive Director, I think the shared clinical decision-making reference that I was referring to is actually, yeah, it's in Appendix B.
Okay.
So that
Thank
would
you.
be the link. Yeah, I thought it was at the previous table or 3, but
Okay. Keeps going. There's another C2. Yeah. I didn't see this part yet. I didn't go down.
What's the 12 to 21 in parentheses? Is that a reference?
the Executive Director, yes, I believe that is, they have a reference list that I didn't include on here because otherwise, aside from this, there were no references to it. And those references would be available through the link. So I think we can strike that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, that's the last page. Okay. I'm gonna go back to the very top and for questions, then we move to the next.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, any final questions on this protocol for coronavirus 19?
No. Those
Any
committee
hands?
member sellers. Thank you.
Okay. Just a moment, and we will open influenza next.
Okay, Executive Director Runyon, the influenza protocols next. And we combined all three inactivated, recombinant, and live attenuated into this one protocol. So in the what's new section, you already notice A, similar to, or as a carbon copy of the other protocols. B and C just outline the strains that are present this year. That was lifted from package inserts. And D just indicates that this is a statutory authorization that's 6 months and up. Patients should receive an age-appropriate influenza vaccination. And the protocol reflects that. A and B, or A rather, is a carbon copy of what was present in the previous iteration of this, so it's not new. I added B to include the flu mist. And then in C, we've included information about the spacing. So we've included ACIP and West Coast Health Alliance, or WCHA, recommended vaccines as far as the spacing goes. And then the vaccine schedule. This is directly from the WCHA recommendations. And basically, anyone that wants a vaccine can get it. I suppose if you're a kid, you might not want it, but you're going to get it anyway. But yeah, so outside of the contraindications, there really isn't much meat to the protocol or recommendation, so to speak, here. So scrolling down. Additional considerations for use. These were lifted from previous protocols as well. And then the package inserts. There's one guidance document, I think it's reference 12, that talks about the hematopoietic stem cell transplant and organ transplant patients. That's where we got those from. Pregnancy and lactation, a lot of that refers to the package inserts and aligns with the recommendations above. Warning precautions, same sort of thing there. Package insert in the guidance document in reference 12. And all of that stuff as well was present in the previous iteration of the influenza protocol. So there was nothing added to this. I simply struck the information that was derivative of the MMWR ACIP recommendations. And you see the generic language there in terms of the contraindications and storage and handling. We're referring them to the prescribing information as well. And then we have the references in 9. So pretty basic recommendations here. Just 6 months and up, essentially anyone who doesn't have a contraindication can receive an age-appropriate vaccine. So we can scroll back up to the top and answer any questions on this. And this is directly in alignment with the current ACIP recommendations, which I think they voted on, and HHS accepted his policy as, I think, 722 maybe. They voted in June, maybe 26th, 27th, or 25th, 26th. So this is in line with the current recommendations.
Okay, so I see no hands. I'm going to go ahead and progress to the next one, if that's okay. RSV.
All right, we'll continue with the RSV protocol. A is the same as in the previous protocols. And then we have all of the information in text there as far as the immunization protocol itself goes. This is in alignment with the most recent, I think, as of April, that ACIP approved these, and it's in alignment with their recommendations where they dropped the age of eligibility for individuals with high-risk conditions from 60 through 74 to 50 through 74, which you'll see here. They also addressed the pregnancy indications. So you'll notice there's no age limit there for pregnant patients. They just have a recommendation related to gestational age with some resources there underneath the table. And you'll see there are also references beneath the table and in section 4 for what constitutes a high-risk condition. So there's CDC guidance there as well. The West Coast Health Alliance recommendations included the link or reference to that CDC document as compared to, or in contrast to, the COVID-19 protocol, where we had the appendices at the end where they spelled all of those things out. They didn't here. So at this point, we'd be dependent upon the viability of that link. And then in 5 and 6, a lot of generic information and referring the individuals to the prescribing information. And same thing for contraindications, storage, and handling. So again, there wasn't anything outside of the what's new section and the vaccine schedule, which is a direct copy and paste from the West Coast Health Alliance recommendations. There wasn't anything added to this. So it would be similar to what you saw in June, or active as recently as June here. And we scroll back up to the top. Happy to answer any questions on this as well.
This committee member Gibler, just practically speaking, how in the pharmacies are patients proving gestational age, or are pharmacists just relying more on prescriptions for that population?
Executive Director Runyon, I am not sure how to answer that.
I'm I asked the question because if pharmacists are not clear about that, I'm not sure if they're willing to prescribe. But so I was just wondering if you've heard of any issues and whether a protocol could clarify what constitutes proof of gestational age, but not maybe relevant today, but I'm just curious in the future how that's being done.
Executive Director, and that's something we could also do a little more research on, discussion with. I could put in some questions or requests to the Alliance in between now and the October meeting. And so if there's any additional insight as to what those recommendations might be, or what that treatment care pathway might look like, or those criteria might look like, or tips, we could include those.
Committee Member Virgin, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. There is a typo to subsection C, RSV vaccine to pregnant patients at 32. It should be 36 weeks instead of 26 weeks.
Thank you.
Also, sharing clinical practice as a former FPOB. We typically administer these vaccines in the clinic or prescribe them for patients who are appropriate. However, committee member Gibler's statement, I think, is well founded for clarification.
And committee member Sellers here, and perhaps we can bring that back to our meeting next month. And discuss that, because I agree with committee member Gibler and Virgin.
Okay. Any last minute questions or comments on RSV?
So I think see the motions for the end. Do we open the standard vaccination protocols? Okay, so
Oh, yeah.
really quickly, I'm going to open each of the standard vaccination protocols because you have to motion on these as well, and there are some amendments. So just to show you the committee what these look like. So this is our current version, and you're just going to see what we're removing from here that's going into rule. And I'll do this very quickly unless there's any questions. So Courtney, if you could manage the hands and I'll just keep going.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Committee member Wickenhagen.
I just want to say that I appreciate this method. It's much easier to see what's changed and what hasn't seen. So thank you.
You bet. And we did not change anything on the assessment treatment care pathway on this was the 18 years and older. I'm just going to keep going to 7 and 17. This one removes influenza and coronavirus. This one doesn't contain RSV. And then you can talk about the repeal if you want. Next is 3 to 6 years old.
And Executive Director Runyon, this just references the PrEP Act authorizations that we talked about earlier, the 3 through 6 years of age is why we struck that there.
So this whole document and the pathway are going to be repealed because when you take these off, there's nothing left. Does that make sense, everyone? So those are full repeal. And I believe this is exactly the same. And I do not believe we had any amendments proposed on managing adverse reactions. Okay, so needed to open that. Okay. Okay, back to you, committee member Sellers, unless there are any other items that we need to visually project.
Okay. All right, so there's going to be a lot of voting coming up here. Is there a motion to move to recommend proposed amendments to OAR 855-115-0345 and OAR 855-102-0130 to the Oregon Board of Pharmacy?
This is committee member Anderson. So moved.
Committee
there a
member
second?
Gibbler, seconds.
Thank you, committee member Gibbler. All right, roll call vote. Committee member Anderson.
Aye.
Committee member Gibbler.
Aye.
Committee member Hammond.
Oh, this is staff member Melvin. Committee member Hammond had to leave the meeting. She's
Okay.
absent.
All right. Committee member Sellers votes yes. Committee member Virgin.
Yes.
Committee member Wickenhagen.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes. Move on to the next proposed motion. Is there a motion to move to recommend the coronavirus 19 vaccine protocol to the Oregon Board of Pharmacy as proposed?
Committee member Virgin. So moved.
Is there a second?
Committee member
Gibbler,
Anderson. I'll be the second.
All right, and our roll call vote. Committee member Anderson.
Aye.
Committee member Gibbler.
aye.
Committee member Hammond is absent. Committee member Sellers votes yes. Committee member Virgin.
Votes yes.
Committee member Wickenhagen.
Votes yes.
All right, this motion passes. On to our next proposed motion. Is there a motion to move to recommend the influenza vaccine protocol to the Oregon Board of Pharmacy as proposed?
Committee member Gibbler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Committee member Virgin seconds.
Excellent. And our roll call vote. Committee member Anderson. Oh, we didn't hear you. Lorinda.
Oh, yes. Aye.
Thanks.
yes.
Committee member Gibbler.
Aye.
Committee member Hammond is absent. Committee member Sellers votes yes. Committee member Virgin.
Aye.
Committee member Wickenhagen.
Aye.
All right, this motion passes. And on to the next one. Is there a motion to move to recommend the respiratory syncytial virus vaccine protocol to the Oregon Board of Pharmacy as proposed?
Committee Member Virgin, so moved.
Can I get a second, please?
Committee Member Gibler seconds.
All right, roll call vote. Committee Member Anderson.
Aye.
Committee Member Gibler.
Aye.
Committee Member Hammond is absent for this vote. Committee Member Sellers votes yes. Committee Member Virgin.
Aye.
Committee Member Wickenhagen.
Aye.
All right, this motion passes.
And then Courtney, could you scroll down to the next proposed motion? Because we went ahead and viewed all of those.
We went ahead and did that. Great, thanks. Is
Yeah.
there a motion to move to recommend the proposed standard vaccination protocols and assessment and treatment care pathways for adults ages 18 years and older, for persons 7 through 17 years of age, for persons 3 through 6 years of age, for persons 6 months through 2 years of age, and managing adverse reactions to the Oregon Board of Pharmacy? So those are all those documents at the end where the protocols were struck out. So can I get a motion, please?
Committee Member Virgin, so moved.
And can I have a second?
Committee Member
Gibler.
Anderson, second.
Excellent. And we'll do a roll call. Committee Member Anderson.
Aye.
Committee Member Gibler.
Aye.
Committee Member Hammond is absent for this vote. Committee Member Sellers votes yes. Committee Member Virgin.
Aye.
Committee Member Wickenhagen.
Aye.
All right, this motion passes. And it is now 9:41 a.m. Is there a motion to move to adjourn this meeting at 9:41 a.m.? Oh, 9:42 now.
Committee Member Gibler, so moved.
All right, is there a second?
Committee Member Virgin, seconds.
Thank you. And roll call vote, Committee Member Anderson.
Aye.
Committee Member Gibler.
Aye.
Committee Member Hammond is absent for this vote. Committee Member Sellers votes yes. Committee Member Virgin.
Aye.
Committee Member Wickenhagen.
Aye.
All right, this motion passes. Thank you all so much for taking your time this morning to meet for these very important items. And we will see you probably in October, if not sooner. Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.